Hello and welcome. My name's George, and my channel is all about helping you get the most out of Logic Pro so that you can record and produce your best music in your home studio. Today, we're doing something a little bit different, and we're looking at the MOTU M2 audio interface. I'm going to cover everything you need to know about this audio interface to help you decide whether or not this is the right audio interface for you. So let's dive in. So right out of the box, my first impression of the build quality of the M-Audio M2 is that it feels like a solid piece of gear. It's actually quite light, so it's not very heavy, but you have a nice metal frame for it, so it feels very solid. The knobs don't feel flimsy at all. They're nice and solid and turn freely. But my favorite thing you get with this audio interface is the LCD meters on the front, which isn't something you usually get in a 2-channel interface in this price range. With the meters, it's great to be able to dial in the preamp gain to make sure I have enough gain on my microphone without even having to look at the mixer in my DAW. I can see right away where I'm sitting signal-wise just by looking at the front of the interface. So that's a big plus for me. Now, as far as the installation and setup goes, if you're using a Mac, you don't actually need to use the drivers, but I certainly recommend that you do. It'll just make everything a bit more stable, but it will run without the audio drivers. But all you have to do is head over to the MOTU site, download the drivers, and they'll install in no time. The same thing goes if you're on a PC. And on the subject of drivers, I've owned a few different MOTU interfaces over the years, including an old MOTU 8 Pre and the MOTU 896. And MOTU continues to support those interfaces even though they're quite old. And that's something that you can't say about a lot of other companies. I've got a few other audio interfaces that I basically can't use anymore because there's no drivers to support them on the newest operating systems. So with MOTU, I feel like they're going to support their products for a long time. And as I said, since you don't actually need the drivers on a Mac, well, then theoretically, you should be able to keep using this audio interface even if they do stop supporting the drivers. So that gives me a bit of peace of mind when purchasing an audio interface like this. Now, as far as the features and specs of this audio interface, so we've got 2 built-in preamps at the front, both with combo jacks. So this means they can both accept either an XLR cable, like you'd use for a microphone, or a TS or TRS cable, like you would use for a guitar. So if you play electric guitar, you can plug that electric guitar right into these 2 inputs. Same goes with keyboards and basically any other instruments or microphones. We also have independent controls for phantom power for each input. So if you're using a condenser microphone, you'll want to make sure you turn on the phantom power. There's also this monitor button, and that allows us to hear whatever we have plugged into the input. So for example, I have my microphone plugged into input 1 right now. If I hit the monitor button, then I'll hear the direct feed from my microphone through either my speakers or my headphones without having to go through my DAW. When you monitor this way, it also cuts down the latency as well because you're not going through your computer. The one thing that I might like to see included with the monitor is a monitor knob so that you can actually blend the signal between the direct signal and the signal you're getting from your DAW. That's something that's included in the M4 and the M6, but not in the M2, unfortunately. As I mentioned earlier, we also have the LCD meters at the front, so we can monitor our 2 inputs right from the front and also our 2 outputs. We have our main volume knob to monitor our speakers here, and we have a separate volume knob for our headphone jack at the front. So the M2 has 1 headphone jack, so that's great if you're just recording yourself and listening back. But if you happen to be recording someone else, then that makes it a little bit difficult because you just have the 1 headphone output. If you think you might want 2 headphone jacks, then you might want to consider the M6, which includes two headphone outputs. On the back of the interface, we have MIDI in and out. So if you have any MIDI gear that you want to hook up to the audio interface, you can do that using MIDI cables. A lot of people these days simply just use USB for MIDI, but if you have any older gear, then you can plug your MIDI cables directly to the audio interface. We also have our monitor outputs on the back, so this will be for our studio monitors and speakers. So we have two TRS line out outputs and two RCA output as well. The interface is also USB-C powered, so we don't need any external power. It just powers directly from USB, which can be great if you're on the go and using this as a kind of mobile setup. You don't need to carry anything around, or you don't even have to look for another power source if you're just running off your laptop battery. So that makes it nice and portable that way. Now, in addition to the audio interface itself, it also comes with some bundled software. So you get MOTU Performer Lite, which is MOTU's own DAW, as well as Ableton Live Lite 2. So there's two DAWs to get you started. There's a collection of virtual instruments, as well as a bunch of loops and sounds. So if you're just getting started with music production and you don't really have any software yet, well, then this is great. It's just something to get you going right away. For me, I don't usually end up using much of the bundled software that comes with products like this. If you're a Logic Pro user, you already have all the plugins you need in there. You have a whole bunch of software instruments and a whole bunch of loops as well. So you don't really need to look any further than that. But as I said, if you're just getting started, then this is great to have. One of the other handy features that's included with M2 is what's called Loopback. And this allows you to record the audio from your computer back into your DAW, or to use it to live stream. So this is a feature that's getting more and more popular with most audio interfaces, and it's really most useful for people who live stream. So if, for example, you're playing a video or music on your computer and you need to stream that out, well then Loopback helps you do that. And just as an example, if you're in your DAW and let's say you wanted to record the audio coming from elsewhere, so let's say I'm playing a video and I want to record that into Logic Pro here, then what you would do is set your input. I'm going to set it to stereo. And instead of input 1 and 2, which is our physical inputs, I'm going to set this to input 3 and 4. And then anything that's playing on my computer will get recorded onto the track using input 3 and 4. Now, as far as the audio quality, right now you're listening to my voice being recorded directly through the M2 audio interface. So you can hear, hopefully, that it's nice and clean and clear. The microphone that I'm using right now is the Shure SM7, which is a notoriously gain-hungry mic. And I'm plugged directly into the M2, and I've got the gain cranked up quite a bit because that's what you need for this microphone. And as you can hear, it performs just fine. It's nice and clear, and I'm not getting any noticeable hiss when I'm cranking the gain on that preamp. So there's no need for something like a cloud lifter like you would need with some other audio interfaces. The M2 also features very low latency, which is great. So latency is the amount of time that it takes for my recorded material to go to my DAW and then back out to my headphones or speakers. And if you can see in Logic here, my MOTU 896 has a latency of 3 milliseconds round trip when set to the lowest I/O buffer. And if I switch over to the M2, that number is even lower, 2.3 milliseconds. So that's quite fast. Now, admittedly, I'm not usually going to have my I/O buffer set to 32. I would usually have it at 128, which still has a very low latency of 6.3 milliseconds. Now, another great feature with the M2 audio interface is, since it doesn't need any drivers, you can actually use this with your iPad or iPhone as well, which makes it even more portable. So you can basically use it anywhere that you have your iPhone or iPad. So if you have an iPhone or iPad using USB-C, you can plug it directly into there. Otherwise, you'll need a adapter. So with this, we can record directly into GarageBand, which is free, or we can use Logic Pro for iPad or for iPhone. So again, this is just super cool for a mobile rig to be able to do that. So should you buy this audio interface? Well, if you're just starting out recording or podcasting and you just need one or two inputs, well then this is a great option too. As well, if you only need one headphone output, then this is a great option. If you need up to 4 simultaneous inputs and 2 headphone outputs, then you might want to consider the M6 instead. For this price range, I really think you can't go wrong with the M2, and it's what I've been recommending to most people when they're looking for an audio interface in this price range. So I hope you found that all helpful. And if you have any other questions about the MOTU M2, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. I want to thank you again for all the likes and subscribes. And if you're a Logic Pro user, don't forget to download my free Ultimate Logic Pro Starter Pack. This includes my Logic Pro Hotkey Cheat Sheet, my audio recording guide, my mixing guide, my gear guide, as well as my Logic Pro audio templates. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.